All right. Well, Bowmore, as always, I'm excited to bring this one to you guys and get it going. Um, Bowmore for me was one of the whiskeys that really got me excited in the 15 and 18, especially once I got into peat. So I don't know if you guys remember this, and Steve will probably appreciate this because he's now getting into peat. But it was like I was like 4 or 5 years into whiskey before I really got into peat. Wasn't a huge fan at first, probably thanks to Lafroig 10, like everyone else that doesn't like peat. So, but I like the 15 and 18 were the first, or some of the first like nicer bottles I was able to get my hands on, and I really enjoyed them. Um, and so I brought them back tonight. Both of these I bought both of these from a place called Super King around the corner over, which is a grocery chain that had both of these on clearance probably three or 4 years ago. So they've been sitting in my inventory for a while, and we built out the rest of the lineup over the years from there forward. So I'll put the lineup in the chat. As I told you guys, we're going to start with the OB15. I really like this. I think I really like this lineup. We've got a pretty even setup of OBs, IBs. We've got a great progression of ABVs, and then also a fun mix of wine casks and bourbon casks. So I think this is going to be a lot of fun. 15 is going to be up first. And the 15 is aged in bourbon barrels first. Oh my God, that's a big pour. It's aged in bourbon barrels first, and then finished in Oloroso sherry casks. So let's see. Let's get into it. Let's get this Sunday primed up here. Cheers. So cheers, everyone.
Cheers.
I still love
like this.
Cheers.
I like this.
Nose is great.
And so they're in Islay, right?
Yeah, so Bowmore is actually, so I was gonna get onto the facts in the next one, but Bowmore is actually the oldest officially licensed Islay distillery. So they were established in 1779. So they have a little over 240 years of being a distillery. So they are old. And as probably most people on here know, I absolutely love Jim McEwen and what he's done for whiskey, and especially obviously at Bruichladdich, because that's what got me into it. Prior to being at Bruichladdich, he was at Bowmore for I want to say close to 50 years, or maybe even over 50 years. I can't remember exactly, but it was a real long time. And I mean, he started at Bowmore when he was 14, 15, if I remember correctly. And then worked his way up over the years. So I'm pretty sure the Bowmore 18 stock is also older Jim Juice, because I bought this 4 years ago, and the bottle was already a few years old at that point. That's why they had discounted. But for sure, the FWP, which is, I'll get into what that is in a little bit, the Isla Violets that we have that we're going to be tasting forth, for sure that is Jim McEwen juice. So. And I still love the nose on the 15. This is awesome. I haven't drank it yet, but
Yeah, my short time of this journey, I suppose. I think the Bowmore 15 was one of the ones I first bought that was like Oloroso finished, and like that started the nosing of that started like every time I had an Oloroso finished something or matured something, it was like it's Oloroso.
yeah.
Just from smelling that so much at the beginning.
So I think I love the nose. Just my initial reaction on this, I love the nose more than I like the palate.
That's fair. I mean, I liked when they started doing sherry stuff after they used to have like the late 90s, maybe even early 2000s screen prints like 15, 17 Mariner stuff they did. It was really good, but those bottles were interesting. They were like, it's one of the few bottles you start learning you have to oxidize stuff. After about 6 to 9 months, it starts turning very aggressively, not in a positive way.
I never had any of those. I've drank from those bottles. I've just never owned one of those bottles. The new Mike that just joined should be Michael Chow. I will send him the Mike. I'll send you the lineup.
Okay, hey everyone. So I'm not on video. I'm like slide.
No worries. I hear your partner in crime that was supposed to be joining us can't make it.
Yeah, he has some family stuff.
All good. All good. All right, just saying we're drinking the 15 right now. We just started, so all good. Yeah, that's wild. Just for how big that nose is, I would have thought this would be a little bit bigger on the palate. It is 43%, but a little thin. And then like,
So Andy, you don't like blue cheese with your wings?
I am not a blue cheese guy. No, not at all. I don't necessarily get blue cheese out of this, but Andy says she does. Anyone else get blue cheese out of this?
I get charcoal on the palate, but I get the sweet cherry on the nose. The nose is, I like the nose more than the palate, but the palate's not bad.
I like the palate. I don't like blue cheese.
Yeah, so this is I believe if I remember correctly, it's 13 to 14 years starts in bourbon, and then it's a finish, or sorry, I think it's 12 actually. I think it's 12 because it's 3 years in Oloroso. So I think it's 12 in bourbon and then 3 in Oloroso. So it's mainly bourbon barrel matured. And then for those of you that don't know where Bowmore is at, so Bowmore actually sits across the lock, right across the way from Bruichladdich. So you can see Bruichladdich from Bowmore and Bowmore from Bruichladdich. Sits on Loch Indall. So those of you that are Bruichladdich fans, you'll know that name. They release a Loch Indall expression. And their name allegedly comes from a black reef that just sits outside of Loch Indall. So those are the fun facts. They are owned by Beam Suntory as well. So if you guys didn't know that, they're owned by Beam Suntory. That's probably why I could not get a response from anyone. Like normally people will like at least try and help even if we can't get someone on, but Beam has always been not helpful in that department. So that makes sense. But one of the truly we'll say iconic Islay distilleries for sure, just because they've been around so long. They've aged so much great stuff out of their #1 vaults warehouse. So
I did the tour last year at Bowmore.
yeah,
For anyone that hasn't gone, I highly recommend it. I think it's probably the best value experience on Islay. Did the Vault #1 tour, and they took you around the warehouse and showed you the process. And they also you tasted out of the barrel itself. It was like 3 really old ones, and you got to bottle like a small, I think it's like maybe 20 or 30 CL bottle to take home. And then you also got to go to the bar and get 2 drinks, which included stuff like the 25 and like some of the expensive ones. So for anyone that's going to Islay, I highly recommend going.
Elijah here agrees as well. So
I think they poured Elijah the 25 and they dumped it out.
That was 2 years ago. That was on accident.
So when I get to Islay, I will book that tour. Don't you worry.
You have to book like another 4 months in advance. That's
Yeah, I'll be transparent. I haven't been since 2015. I really need to get back. But it was one of my favorite tours because they were very irreverent. They were very like everyone else tries to like. I mean, they're friendly and stuff, but the tour guide let us do barley angels, like on the floor malted area and stuff, and the kiln, how they interact. They really keep it very approachable. It's the style I got from it. It was really cool.
in the kiln.
Yeah,
and they're
That's pretty
malted,
funny. That's great.
Steaming the barley.
Hey, whiskey's meant to be fun, right? I mean, that's what
Yes.
we
Yes.
do. So. As you should. All right, I'm gonna move on to the 18. And we got 3 mics on this thing. Oh, and I'll send the new Mr. Siebert the lineup real quick. Okay, moving on to the 18. So the 18 was I think the 18 used to be priced like around like 120, if I remember correctly. Now I think in America you find it, I think it's around like 140, 150. Probably it's still one of the more affordable 18s, but it is a 40, it is 43%. But back when I first bought my very first 18, like $100 on a bottle was insane because I still was paying off college student loan debt, and I did not have a lot of money, but it was one of the first things I bought, and I remember just really enjoying it, liking it. And also this was like me new to Pete in some sense. I think I want to say that was around 2016, 2015, 2016 time periods when I first like really got into the 15 and 18s on Bowmore.
Have you had the 15? What is it, like Darkest or something like that?
I have. It's been a while, but I have had it. We had it at one of the Pete meetings for Scotch Club.
I think that's a lot better than the normal 15. Also, the 18, there's like a complex and deep and complex or something one, an Austin Martin version. I have the Austin Martin version, which I think is a little, yeah.
Yeah, that's one of the interesting things about Bowmore. I mean, obviously, BM Suntory's got a lot of money behind them, right? And like, I really have enjoyed Bowmore, but I feel like the last 3 to 4 years with the OB stuff, like I almost feel like they're catering more to maybe like the Aston Martins of the world, but and trying to like up those bottlings and putting their better stock into those. But to be fair, I haven't had those lineups or those expressions. So I'd have to try them to see what they're like, but I don't know. Can you tell me, Mike, do you like those?
I have the 15 that's aged in bourbon. The 18 is kind of like this 18, but maybe they add more port or Oloroso or something like that. In general, these Austin Martin or these collaborations are kind of hokey a little bit, right? But I did get it from when I went to Taiwan at the duty free. It was actually cheaper than a normal 18. So then I bought a bottle just to try it, and it's pretty good. Yeah.
What batch or what year release of the Aston Martin?
I'm guessing it's like the 22 or 23. I got it this year in February. But this is not the 22 that you're thinking of, maybe, or the 21 and 22. This is just like the duty free 18.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
Yeah. Batch variation.
Everyone would have batch variations. So 18 I like better on the palate, but less on the nose. I like the 15 nose more than I like this. The nose on this 18. This 18's aged. The older 18s used to be aged in PX and Oloroso, and my understanding is the newer 18s are now they have bourbon barrel influence, so like 60-40 change. So the 18s that you buy now are a little different than, or a lot different than what the 18s that you used to buy. So they still obviously have the sherry influence, but they don't have but they have a bourbon component to them now. So and which maybe makes sense because obviously sherry casks are way more expensive than bourbon casks, right? So if you want to not increase your prices, or that's what we'll say, you have to incorporate more bourbon into the mix, right?
When do you think it changed, Nanda?
I think it's been the last few years, like the last 3 or 4 years, I believe, like right before COVID. I don't know how long ago was COVID now. Is that 4 years ago? So yeah, I'll write it right around that time period.
They're still pretty dark though.
Well, and that's the other thing, right? From the OB standpoint, no one's like confirming it or denying it, but I know Bowmore in the past has used coloring, and so I'm sure that they still do use some coloring because their bottles are beautiful. The one, and I'm not gonna lie, I'm not really like a guy who gets super excited because of color necessarily. Although the Devil's Cask, for those of you that got that out on, I think is just such a beautiful, rich color that I'm real excited to try that one. And I will tell everyone here that I showed a lot of self-control and did not try any of these prior to tonight so that I could be surprised with you guys, which I normally try at least one of them. And I said no to myself this time.
Yeah, that was a joke because they probably just added more E150 to make up the bourbon casks. I'm pretty sure they color them. Yeah, they have to be colored.
So I do wonder a bit, Nando, like, so how long has Beam Suntory owned Bowmore now?
Since the 90s, I think. Remember?
Right.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
I know that traditionally, like a lot of people, they've probably used E150. You've seen some of their bottlings of the colors. This had to have been there. I do wonder if they're starting to shift away from it. And like, so part of the reason I even mentioned this is like, so they bought Glengarry, a while back, and they've actually been taking their processes back way more traditional. They're doing floor malting again. They're changing some of their steels and some of their production processes to be way more old school and traditional. So I wonder if they're having a shift in how they're looking at doing.
Yeah, I'd be interested to know. I mean, that's why it'd be great to have a rep on here to ask those questions. Because Bowmore was, I mean, especially traditionally, and even Jim McEwen himself will tell you that he put a lot of coloring in their stuff. I think actually one of his, if you guys have seen, I think it's the Water of Life film, or maybe it's the other one. Like he makes a joke about how he accidentally spilled a bunch of coloring into one of the vats that he was blending, and they sold it to the Asian market and they loved it, right? And so, I mean, they certainly have in the past. We know that, right? And I don't know. I think maybe for their traditional stuff, like their core, I think they would still, just to keep consistency among at least coloring from changing, what the batch is made up of. But I don't know. It's a great question. If I can get someone on the line here, I will record all these and ask the questions later. But that being said, I actually really like this 8. Does anyone else like this 18?
I like it. Makes me want to get one,
Nice.
but I'm curious about batch variations.
Yeah.
This one.
If you see I think it's like deep and complex. I think that one's slightly better, I believe. I don't know if they still have those. I think some places still do, but yeah. But that thing you talked about, what Jim spilled, are you sure it wasn't soap?
Hey, we're gonna find out in about 2 more expressions, my friend. So
Was that the violets one?
yeah, we shall see.
So somebody said like people asked him about that. He gets super pissed off about it. Like because some people don't like it, right? They complain about it. Actually, I like it, but I think like someone told a story about how like in a bar, like someone brought that up and he like walked out.
Fuck it, you gotta ruin it for everyone.
I mean, it's not a well-kept secret. There's been a lot of Bowmores over the years that have been soapy or super lavender heavy, and sometimes that can be good, sometimes not.
Yeah, and so we're talking about the FWP style Bowmores that are reminiscent of those 80s Bowmores. It tends to be like I think there was like a 6-year run, 4 to 6 year run, where there was a lot being pushed out of Bowmore that tasted like that. Some people love them, some people hate them. I sourced one so that we could find out when we eventually did this tasting. I've had this bottle for 2 years. So we've got 2 more expressions. We've got 1 more before we get there though. And then we'll touch on that. So
It'll be fun.
all right, I really like that. Or I like that 18 as like a starter of the night. That's like a good expression.
Yeah, if you're starting a peat night, that's a good.
At 43%, I think it's a good way to get into it. Unless anyone has any questions about the 15 or 18, I'm going to move on to the Wine Society 21 year. And so this does not say that this is a Bowmore on the bottle. And I'll show it to you guys real quick. If you guys haven't seen this, I picked this up from a friend that I buy from. He always goes back to the UK and brings back way more than he can drink, and then always sells some stuff, which is a great friend to have, right? When you're in whiskey, run a whiskey club. But I buy way too much stuff from him at times, and this was one of the things I bought. But at least I knew we were going to do a Bowmore tasting. So this is a full term matured bourbon barrel. And I think it's kind of funny that this is bottled for a wine society and not a whiskey society. And then they have a description on the back. They say Islay malts are heavily peated and pungent. I actually don't find, which I think is totally inaccurate for Bowmore, because I don't like, they're peaty, yes, but I don't think they're big peat punches. And I definitely don't think they're pungent. So, but oh shoot, I meant to get a new glass. Damn it. Ooh,
I like this one a lot. 46.
fruity nose on this.
Nanda, what'd you say about the bottling on this one?
So this is bottled for the Wine Society. It's a UK society. They do malts as well. I don't know much about this one. I kind of I will find out more about them and send some information about them around. But they do bottle, they do wine, and they also bottle whiskeys as well. So, but this is a full term bourbon barrel maturation that I do know, and it's 21 years. So this is not there's no wine influence in this one. So we have 2 purely bourbon barrels, which is this one and the 80 Rattray, which we'll do in a couple expressions. And this is 46%. So we're starting to inch our way up a little bit. It was only aged in bourbon.
Certain finish.
Ooh, honestly, I really like that.
Over the body bourbon.
It's almost even a mild sourness in the nose, but it's really cool. Like, you know, the peat and like the fruit with it.
Yeah, that's probably wrong, because I'm getting a kind of, there's fruitiness there, but there's a weird note that I'm not recognizing. I could see that.
I had to leave the water here. Pretty appealing. I like it a lot.
I almost get like a gluey note on the nose, maybe. Well, I haven't sniffed glue sticks in a real long time though, so maybe I should go back to that first and double check.
You're back to school supplies?
Yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna say like waxy green apple skin, that kind of like note, and I get it's a little bit grassy too for me.
Yeah.
Not in a bad way, but like if you're actually walking an apple orchard.
Yeah. Yeah, apple stone fruits, this is for sure on the nose. Like that's a dead ringer, but
I like the 18. Well, they're 2 different, right?
Well, for not knowing anything about this bottle, I think they bottled a pretty solid.
Yeah.
I like this. Like for me, if this was like starting the night, like I think because it's not wine finished or wine matured, like this is an easy like palate. Actually, I might drink this first before I would drink the Bowmore 18, to be honest. Even though it's a little higher proof.
The peat integrated with some of the stone fruits in the palate, it kind of hangs in the back end. Really nice.
Yeah. And if you guys like this, I haven't had the 80 Rattray, so I can't speak to that one. But the Dorus More that we have, the expression number 3 or their 3rd edition Dorus More, it amps up what this does well. It amps it up by a lot because of the higher proof. That's like a stone fruit explosion. I love that whiskey. And it was weird because those you can usually find sitting or still find them sitting around every once in a while, which blows my mind because I think they're really good whiskeys.
The peat is less prominent on this one than the 18 for me,
I agree.
which is not a bad thing. It's good.
Very subtle. Steve, how's the peat levels for you on this?
These are great, Fernando.
Yeah,
I've enjoyed all 3 of them so far. And so this
he's
is
officially in the deep end of peat now. There we go.
Yeah.
I don't know, Andy, what about you?
I'll mute.
Yes, you gotta mute me. So Steve and I are on the same page with peat, not big fans of peat. But these actually, I've not thoroughly enjoyed the nose on each of these, but the palate is phenomenal, especially this one that we're tasting right now. So peat level is like, for me, it's great.
So if I could, Fernando, I'd probably go out and buy a few of these. Really. So far, all 3 of them. They're really nice.
Just don't buy them at the distillery. It was really disappointing. The prices there were really expensive. It was more expensive than back home, which is really surprising. Similar to Lefroy, also owned by Beam Suntory.
Speaking
Yeah,
of
they have-
Beam, I was really surprised. So looking them up, I was surprised they own Auchentoshan. I didn't know that they owned that. Which is, I'm sure they use it for blends and stuff, but I actually really like that distillery. They do some really weird grassy stuff that I enjoy.
That probably goes into their world blend that they have, right? That A and O something blend that they do.
I'm sure, but they also have a Glengarry too. So that's Glengarry does a lot, goes into a lot of blends too. So. Before we move on to the 3 big hitters of the night, what's everyone's favorite so far?
2 and 3.
Number 3.
3?
Yeah, I agree. Number 3. It was a little unexpected. It was fun.
Yeah, number 3 so far.
I'm on the 18, number 2.
Yeah. Okay.
Measure.
Although pretty funny, I still think 15 has the best nose out of all 3 of these.
I like the 18 nose.
That Oloroso, man. Like marzipan. So good.
Well, I like marzipan. Different than marzipan. Different taste. Very peanut buttery. But okay, so a few people 18, but most of us seem to be the 21. Yeah, I'd probably lean towards the 21. Actually, I really like this.
Somebody on the call earlier said something about oxidation for the Bowmores. I've noticed that too. Like the flavor doesn't hold up well in the bottle for even cask strength ones. So I wonder if I have to like just pump it with the nitrogen to keep it.
That was Kyle. So
I was more speaking of older Bowmore, but I think even current ones, I don't know that it turns in a way that like the old stuff used to. Like it would be really good and then it wasn't, and it was really a sharp drop off. Usually, most oxidation, it's very gradual. Kind of that was what's weird about some of the older Bowmores. The more recent ones, I found they can get muted. It can be. I still think you need to drink most Bowmores and cask strength ones pretty quickly, in less than a year. But there's some scotches you gas them or not, and you keep them open for a couple of years. A lot of bottles are fine.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think I've noticed it with other distilleries, but the Bowmore, like my friend Ron and I, we definitely both noticed it right away. Like we were wondering what happened to the flavor. Like there was a bottle that we really both liked, and then like 6 months later, it just was not the same, and it didn't feel like it, that it was even worth the money anymore.
there, the one I know for sure outside of Bowmore that turned for me was, and I was so bummed because when he first opened, it was beautiful. Was a Edgedour Sauternes cask. That one, like after 6 months, was fucking just fell off a cliff and was not good. I was like, and like everything I loved about it went out of that bottle, and I was so bummed. Because when you first open that bottle, it's amazing.
The cask strength one or the regular 46?
Cask strength one, yep.
The regular
remember that.
46 is very soapy too.
Mm.
So
I
I
have
got
one of those Nandos, so I'll keep that in mind.
Go ahead. Sorry.
I was gonna say I have one of those. I haven't cracked it yet, so I'll definitely keep that in mind.
Yeah,
I think
no,
that-
it's great
I'm
for
just
4 to
checking.
6
I think
months.
I have one too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great. We had it in a tasting. When we did our last Edgedour tasting, we had the Sauternes cask in there. And I know a few people bought it after that tasting. It's awesome when you first open it, but drink it quick because it loses it. And it's so weird because I don't think I've ever had it that happen that fast with any other expression,
Yeah, Edgedour flavor usually sticks around quite a bit. And so I've had some really good Edgedours, but I'll be the most transparent I can be here. A lot of my friends give me shit for it because they think I don't like Edgedour. I have a flaw in my palate. I pick up a lot of metallic. You could say soapy, but it's probably more metallic. My palate's just super sensitive to it. And a lot of Edgedours have that note. So I just pick it up, even in good casks, good finishes. But usually it takes about 6 months before you get that drops off, and then I can taste the rest of the cask. But that Sauternes one, that one went quickly. A lot of them, usually that's kind of bottle you can keep around a year or two. It's not a big problem. The flavor starts integrating well. A lot of Edgedour cask strength holds up pretty well usually.
Well, so then we won't see you in October for the Edgedour tasting?
I might. I mean, hey, I do like drinking through it, and I do enjoy the bottles, but we all have something that we know is good, but your palate doesn't appreciate it the right way. There's just something,
Yeah. No, which is all good, right? And that's why we do these tastings, right? Because everyone has it. One, so we don't have to go out and buy these bottles because quite honestly, a lot of these bottles are expensive. But we can try it first, right? And see what we like, and because we all have different palates, so at the end, once we're through the 6, everyone's going to have a different opinion about what was the best, what was the worst, or whatever, right? And so, sometimes we're on the same page, but normally everyone has a different opinion. So, okay, we're going to move on to the one I'm most excited to try tonight, quite honestly, and it's this Islay Violet's 33-year. This is bottled by Elixir Distillers, finished in Cognac casks. Mainly matured in American oak cask, very likely bourbon barrel cask, and then finished in Cognac. I believe this was bottled in 2020 or 21, one of the two. This was what we actually talked about this. So I'm going to tie in Elixir Distillers here a little bit. We did an Elixir Distillers tasting. I think it was 2 or 2.5 years ago. I'll have to go back and look exactly when it was, but I know for a fact it wasn't last year, and it had been a while. But Ollie from Elixir Distillers, who is their master blender, he on that call said he loves Colila. That's mainly what he works with, but one of his favorite distillery is Bowmore, and he had talked about this bottle on there. about them bottling an FWP. And then I actually opened the 25 year that we have in tonight's tasting. I opened it on that tasting. I like an idiot. I was hammered. I drank a little too much that night and opened that bottle. I'd intended it for this tasting, but I don't think it went bad or anything. It shouldn't have. But this Isle of Violets, I was super excited to get this. So this is from the FWP era. If you look online, the first note you find, and Kyle's already mentioned it, is lavender. There's a bunch of lavender on this bottle, if you can see it. I'm interested to see, because FWP, quite honestly, I'm not a fan. The ones I've had, I'm not a fan of. These tend to be a love it or hate it type of whiskey. I know people who are hardcore love it, and they've spent thousands of dollars on these bottles collecting them. One who's here in Southern California who let me try a few of his. But this is by far the most expensive bottle we had tonight. If you guys look online for this bottle, they're usually in almost $1,000, if not over $1,000. I think I got this one for a little over $6,000, if I remember correctly. So it certainly wasn't cheap. But so I'm excited to get into this. So thank you guys for coming together and getting on this tasting so we could open this bottle. And I really want to hear everyone's opinion on this one, because I feel like it's going to be, some people will love it and some people will hate it. And if you just joined, we're on Isle of Violets pour number 4, but don't feel like you have to jump straight into that one.
I get rosemary on the nose.
We've got a rosemary on the nose from the crowd over here.
You remember the candies that used to be on the paper? They were little sugar dots and they were on paper.
Yeah.
That's what I get on the nose.
I get method bathroom cleaner.
Method bathroom cleaner.
That's pretty funny.
You get soap on.
I got soap.
So it's to me, it's interesting because like normally when these are with like Cognac Cask, they're usually really sweet and have like like either a candy or which, you know, Beth, you get the candy out of that, but or a like sweet fruit note. Like out of this, it's way more floral to me than it is sweet on the nose. I haven't tried it yet. And I almost wonder if they finish this in Cognac to try and balance out the floralness of this.
So that's kind of what I was wondering. Like, you know, Murray McDavid used to do that a bunch too, which is adjacent to obviously what we're talking about. Like they finished stuff in everything, including Cognac often with things probably had no business. You always wondered, was this experimenting or were some of those inferior casks or had flaws they were trying to round out?
That was probably because Bruichladdich bought so much casks, because those were bottled at Bruichladdich, and I'm sure they were trying to get rid of some of their casks that they overbought for their old acing program. That's I have no clue because I haven't talked to Murray McDavid. We were going to do a Murray McDavid tasting, and then they switched importers here, so it made it a lot harder to do it. But yeah, I don't know.
So officially through people that I'll say sort of know, said it was just experimentation, and because everything was so cheap at the time and nothing was worthwhile, they were just having fun and goofing with it. But I can imagine if they were doing that with some of those guys, like that was odd to do at the time. You're finishing like St. Magdalene and like Cognac cask. I mean,
yeah,
some of those probably had flaws. I think you'd have to talk to the people really doing it, to your point, to really understand, like, hey, maybe in general it was experimentation, but I figure some of those are like, if we're going to be able to sell this at some point, we got to do something.
Yeah. So I just tried this, and I'm interested to hear what everyone thinks about this one. Definitely a soapy note on this, like light. It's not overbearing like I've had before, and then like a big fig note for me.
You wouldn't get this idea of gin.
Gin.
Yeah. Like the floralness of gin.
Seemed like a lot more alcohol punch in the start of this than the 46.2% would indicate.
I could see that, but like on the finish, it still sticks around a lot more than especially the one we just had before it did, or any of the 3 expressions before it did. I think it's because those soapiness or floralness or whatever you want to call it just sticks around on your palate a long time.
It's pretty tasty. It's fun.
Is there anyone here who doesn't like this?
I don't know if I'm a huge fan of it. I think it's good for a sip or two, but then after that, it became a little too much for me.
Which isn't surprising.
18 more.
Yeah.
Yeah, 600.
Can you see the violet candy? They're violet candies. Makes me wonder how they would compare.
Bust it out, Beth. Come on.
Nah, they're for a friend.
Oh.
I'm not sure it's my thing.
Uh,
But I like this.
so this isn't one that I would spend $600+ on for myself. FYI, there's almost no bottles I would spend $600+ for myself. There's maybe a few out there, but I think this is a really fun one to at least try.
Yeah.
So especially if you guys have never had a FWP before, like this one isn't as punchy as I've had before either. Like this one doesn't explode on your palate and say like this is very floral, very fragrant, like perfumey. And so for those of you who don't know, FWP is French whore perfume. That's what those lovingly became to be called. Probably in the 2020s that wouldn't happen, but you know, a lot of people started tasting these a while back. So
So this is when you caught them early on a, along the same, it's a nice early dinner time frame with the French whore perfume. It's not 3 a.m. after a all night binge drinking and things are different.
no, yeah, you can't. There's no drinking this late. Would kill me.
But this is really nice. Like I said, it's like lavender. There's even some violets if it's well integrated. Peat. It's really nice. These notes, if unbalanced, are definitely not pleasant.
Yeah, for me, just on the finish, it like reminds me when I used to get my like mouth washed out with soap a little bit. So like, I don't dislike this one though. So I will say that I think this is a really cool one to try one time. Unless anyone thinks this is awesome and would love to have a bottle of this, but and if there's anyone in here who thinks that, please let me know.
Are we doing the raffle later on?
Fuck no. The interest in holding this alone. Also, one guy was supposed to come over tonight, so I have to fill a set after this tasting too. So we'll see. But I think this is a fun one to be able to come back to maybe later on, just double check and see, like always. Like I always tell everyone, if you can, try everything 2 or 3 times just to be sure that you do like it or don't like it, right? FWPs at this point in my life, I know like it's just not necessarily for me, but still really fun to try. And anytime, like if anyone ever pulled one out and said, "Hey, do you want to try one?" I'd be like, "Yeah, let's do it," because I just want to see. And I do think this is one of the better FWPs I've ever had. So
this is pretty good. I might buy a couple of samples off of you if you got some extra. Might be down.
I like your analysis though, Kyle, to where it tastes balanced. It tastes balanced. It's
I was
really
being a little obtuse with my analogy, but yeah, this is for these because often I've had a lot of those, like he's saying, sometimes they just kick you in the teeth. They're not pleasant. It's fun to taste, but man, they're just really not good. Personally, I don't think very good whiskey. This is a good representation of that.
And I will, before we move on to the next expression, I would tell you guys, if you're using one glass, 100% wash out your glass, because going back to bourbon barrel, and my dog's trying to get me to play with him. I would definitely wash out your glass and wash out your palate too. Like just definitely drink some water and bring it back to baseline as much as you can.
So I was originally going to share a tasting set with my friend Ron. He says you're going to have to want your own set for that FWP violets. Now I'm going to make him pay for my tasting set.
Not a fan, Mike?
No, actually, it's fine, but you know, it's not worth however much it is now. I mean, it's interesting, right?
So I took a screenshot because I was just wanted to look this one up earlier today and see how much these were going for. And so timeless and tasty. So I don't know if you guys probably can't see that, but I have no idea who Timeless and Tasty is, but they're apparently an online store. They have this in their inventory for $7,000. And I'm like, that's crazy, first of all. Secondarily, if anyone tried this, who would ever pay that? I mean, when this came to market, it was 450 pounds was the going rate, which is roughly about what we paid for it, I think, and once you make the conversion. So I didn't pay much over what it came to market at, but again, you know, it's a fun one to try. I'm glad there's a few of you that like this one. I know this won't end up as my favorite. I think it's really cool to try though.
Are there other 30-plus-year-old Bowmores from FWP that are violets? Or is this the only one?
Oh, I'm sure there are. There have to be. Do I know of them myself? No. But because I know the guy I was thinking of, if I remember, I know he had a 20+ year one. I'll text him after this and ask him because I know he has a few expressions. I'm sure there are, though. There have to be.
Yeah, because Ron had one in Japan. I don't know if it's the exact same one, you know, barrel or what. So I have to go back and look at some of the pictures he sent.
So Nando, I saw that site that you mentioned. There are still places that are retail available. You have to pay for shipping, but are like $600 to $800, $700 to $800.
And that's honestly not that bad considering like 33-year whiskeys now are stupid expensive. I mean, I'm just going to point to Bruichladdich. Their 30-year is awfully priced. It's just insane. So to get something that like is pretty rare, you don't find a lot of these out in the wild. You know, isn't a horrible price. I just wouldn't pay it again. So.
This is a good way to try it. You're right. The format translates well for this. Get a sample, but you don't have to buy it.
Yeah. Okay, I'm gonna move on to the 80 Rattray after I reset my palate here a little bit. And the 80 Rattray is actually so it's not our oldest expression, but it's the oldest bottle. This was bottled in 2014. So if this one's been sitting around for a long time, I found this one at a liquor store in Long Beach. For those of you that don't live in California, and Long Beach is probably like 20 miles north of me, 25 miles north of me or so. This one was about a little over $200. I think it was 200 plus tax. Long Beach tax is 10%, so I think this is somewhere around 225, 230 out the door. And so it is only a 13-year, but this was bottled in 24. So it was bottled a decade ago, legitimately.
This is the lightest color we have of the lot.
Yeah, there's no coloring in this at all. So
I think the flavor very strong.
And whoa.
Deceptively, the color's deceptive.
That nose is instantly punchy, though. At least to me. Like, this is very ethanol forward to me.
I like it with water.
Although I might need to, again, my palate probably needs to reset a little bit. So I passed by this bottle like 3 or 4 times when I went to this liquor store. For those, if anyone cares, it's corked on sterns. And I never bought it. And then Once I realized we were going to do a Bowmore tasting at someday, I said F it and I bought it. And it's been in the inventory ever since then. Wow, this nose is vastly different than what we were just drinking.
It's just like vanilla and sweet peat.
Yeah, I was gonna say, is it vanilla? I don't get like fruitiness on this at all.
This one seems really complex to me. The finish is nice and long.
Yeah.
Mm.
I saw this at down the beach 2 years ago.
There's an oiliness to this, though,
I think that
and like a viscosity for sure.
You remember the story?
I went back.
This is way different than the Society 21 year, which is also all bourbon.
I remember.
This is way different. This is way different than any Bowmore I think I've ever had, actually, now that I think about it, because normally the bourbon barrel Bowmores are like big fruity punches, like stone fruit punches for me.
The 15-year Austin Martin is a little bit like this. I mean, not as good as this, of course. Yeah, but it's also bourbon barrel, of course.
I do like this. It's just throwing me because it's not fruity at all. Like there's no fruit forward notes on this. It almost like gives me a little Klein Leash vibe almost. Because the peat on this is like light, like very light to me. Again, my palate may be screwed at this point, but
It's oily. It borders on waxy. I could see that a little bit.
Just had the vanilla cream. I liked it with definitely more water than without water. Too spicy.
people here are saying it's better with water, so I'm going to try like 2 drops.
Good.
This goes against my ethics as a whiskey drinker, but we'll try it. But like, just look at the legs in the glass. It's for sure got. The nose is way, it opens up the nose and it's way more spice forward to me than.
I think it tumbled out. The water. Yeah, just 2 drops.
A couple of drops treats it very well.
Then on the palate, it just rounds it out.
Mm. Oh, way creamier. I do like the palate with a little water. I'll give you that. The nose I didn't like as much with water, but and this is the youngest expression of the night. Now that I think about it, 13 year.
Oh, yeah, this is
Of the
10,
core.
It is NAS.
Yeah, because this was distilled back in March of 2001, bottled in September 2014. So almost exactly a decade ago.
It's not 4, right?
No. That was a special release. You got anyone like this one? Are you guys liking this?
I liked it.
Yeah.
You liked?
I'll take that as put this number 2 in my tasting right now.
What's number 1? 18?
The 18. I just like sharing out. That's why.
I think this is one that the longer you let this sit in your glass, this might get better. I might leave a little bit. Well, I guess I could re-pour, but I might leave a little bit in the glass and try this in a minute. We're so quiet tonight. What happened?
Good whiskey. Making me think.
Like, it is still blowing my mind a little bit that this has no fruit forward notes on this though. Or at least to me. Does anyone get fruit out of this? Like, there's a sweetness, like, but it's like a creamy sweetness to it, but it's not fruit to me.
Maybe slightly earthy.
I like it.
Mm.
Whiskey. I don't
Earthy?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Andy's saying she gets a slightly melon taste out of this a little bit, but
Which is fine in whiskey, but yeah, like, say, not.
Is it refill bourbon barrel or hogshead?
the bourbon, this says bourbon hogshead, doesn't tell me if it's refill or not. I would assume from 80 Rattray, I would assume it's a refill bourbon barrel.
Yeah.
I doubt this is the first.
And by the color too, I think.
Yeah, the color being so light too. This has to probably second or third, or sorry, probably a third or fourth fill. Probably not even refill.
So light.
Is there a limit that you can fill it, or there's not?
No,
No.
you just can't call it first a refill. But usually, if I remember, I think like 3 to 5 is like kind of depends how long you're aging for and everything. But it's hard to get past that because then you just have nothing left in the barrel. You know, even if you refire it. But
I've definitely heard of fourth fills,
yeah.
which would be a fifth time that whiskey's been in the barrel.
Right. Yeah.
It's basically putting it in stainless or toad at that point. It's not. It's actually really nice because it lets the whiskey like just be itself, and so you see something that'll be aged for a really long time. I had a 35 or 40-year-old Glenfarclas that was in a fourth fill barrel, and it was this really nice whiskey. It was not anything you like, oh yeah, no, it's just showing you what Glenfarclas the distillery is, not the wood at all. It was great.
You know what I'd love to see that and was, I don't know if you guys remember our Kilhoman tasting, but we had the new make spirit of Kilhoman in that tasting, and it is fucking wonderful. So I would love to see something like that with Kilhoman. That'd be really cool, and see how that matures over time.
So come back in, about the time that we're getting ready to pass our whiskey collections off to the next generation, is when that bottle would be ready, I'm afraid.
Exactly.
Call them up, tell the Willises to get started on it.
That's kind of funny though, because I just revamped my trust like 4 or 5 months ago, and I literally had to spell out exactly what whiskey goes to my son. The rest goes to you guys actually, so hopefully I don't go anytime soon. But
I left instructions for bottles to be opened on various birthdays over the next 30 years after my passing.
Oh fuck, I love that. I didn't even think about that.
Yeah, that way you got to get back together. You got to think about me, but on the payoff, there's some really good whiskey to drink. So if I don't drink it first, I might drink it first.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to leave any bottle, so hopefully that's what I'm saying. I hope it's a long time. But
hey, if much like my last check bouncing, my last bottle is emptied on my deathbed, that's fine too.
Exactly.
I agree with that. We all buy stuff to put back, but it's all to drink at some point. I think most of us, our whiskey collection will probably outlive us, even though that's not our intent.
1000%. What is it? Sable. Here you go. Here's one for you. Who knows what Sable is?
Stashing beyond life expectancy.
Stash acquired beyond life expectancy. Yes. And I don't even think I'm like, oh shit, I'm getting there maybe, but I've got the countdown to 40 is on. So actually, speaking of, Thank you for reminding me about that, Beth. It is this is actually the first countdown to 40 tasting that we're going to do, because this was kind of a somewhat of I made sure we got a FWP as an ode to Jim McEwen, and then later in the year we'll pick that back up starting in December. So we're going to do a Bruichladdich tasting in December. January is going to be Campbelltown, and then in February when I turn 40 will be a fun little special tasting that you'll find out when we get there. And then we'll also do one big in-person one later on in the year, when I move back to my house and I can host you guys. So
Winner.
so record too much. Let's move on to the Manzanilla. You guys get out of here. Which is the part of the Vintner's trilogy. There was, if I remember correctly, the 18, the 25, and a 28 year. Double check me on the other two. I first had, and you guys can see if you guys want to see the bottle. They had released this about four or 5 years ago. Bowmore did. There was of the three expressions, I have these at a Pete and Meetin during COVID that Scotch Club put on. Had all three expressions. I thought by a mile the Manzanilla cask was my favorite, and I picked this one up for a decent price about a year and a half ago, and I'm glad I did, because I think it's by decent. I think this was like 2-something, 2-ish.
Oh, 100%.
Fucking yeah.
Yeah.
100%.
So,
Yeah.
and I saved this one for last because I knew this one was a hitter for me personally. Obviously, you guys decide what you like or don't like, but let me know if you like it as much as I do. So I'm going to get into it now.
It's like a classic.
Amanda, what's with the wine connections on these Bowmores? It's kind of puzzling.
Meaning what?
Well, the Vintner's trilogy, it's something to do with winemaking.
Yeah, so they're aged in different wine casks. All three are.
Oh, so that's the series that Bowmore did.
Yes, correct. That's outside of PX Oloroso that they normally age in.
I thought it was a Vintner's pick. Okay.
Mike, you had a question or comment?
Yeah, this one's kind of like a classic Bowmore flavor profile in some sense. Yeah. For me, not that I've had a lot.
Oh.
Yeah,
That Manzanilla brings like a citrusy kick to it. I don't know. I still really like this.
Yeah, that's the first time I noticed the citrus when you brought it up, because I think I've had this before, but yeah, I like that citrus.
Yeah.
So not to be particularly obtuse, but when you say citrus, are we talking about
like it's like a dried orange peel note to it?
Okay.
Hops. So it's not like biting into
I'm only on dram number 3 right now, so I'm well behind.
No worries.
But I was curious because there was this line of Bowmores that came out in the early 80s that were like citrus bombs, like orange juice or like grapefruit juice. And it's kind of gone away. There's some in the early 80s. The black Bowmores were known for that.
Oh, fuck, those are good.
Yeah, and I tried one of them, and I was like, oh, yeah, this is the reason why people spend $15,000 on a bottle of whiskey. I have a mortgage to pay, so I won't. But so I was curious if it's in that line, then I'm really excited to try the next couple of whiskeys.
Yeah, the Vintner's Exchange. This one's, my opinion, very good. I really like this whiskey. Probably, obviously, you guys get there when you get there. Probably my favorite of the night so far. Those black Bowmores are awesome. The first edition at one point was going for like $25,000 to $30,000. the second, and I think there's 3 editions of that, if I remember correctly. And those were going for a little less. A big shout out to Andy Smith at Scotch Club, who gave me the tiniest dram of the second edition Black Bowmore, but forever grateful for that. Super cool to try that. And Bowmore, I mean, Bowmore's had some iconic releases over the years, right? I mean, they've been around too long to not have done a couple really nice things. This is really good to me.
Yeah, like you talked about, like, I mean, you get the old Sheriff bottlings, some of the Staunton ones, or even the Sea Dragon, 30-year-old. I mean, they've had some really good bottlings over the years, and just some of the standard stuff has been pretty good too.
Yeah,
but some good indies, just as long as you stay away from the lavender soapiness.
Well, in fact, in one expression, we went full steam ahead, or we tried to. It ended up being a little bit more muted than some of them are. So happy about that, but or at least for my palate. I kind of would have wished I would have gotten one of those really soapy, like lavender forward ones. I mean, there's still some in this, but those are so gnarly. They really mess with your palate. I'm going to end the recording. So anyone who's watching this after the fact, cheers. And